So we've got breaking news. Donald Trump is suing Rupert Murdoch and the Wall Street Journal. That's the subject of today's video. I'll tell you what's going on, and I want to hear your thoughts also. Headline: Trump sues Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch over Epstein report. President follows through on the libel threat over a report that said he sent Epstein a body birthday note and sketch. It's referring to this article we've been talking about the last couple of days. It had all sorts of crazy details in this thing, basically saying that there's this book out there, Leather Bound, by Ghislaine Maxwell. It's got all these letters, Trump's letters, one of them. This is the headline here. Jeffrey Epstein's friend sent him body letters for a 50th birthday album. One was from Donald Trump. Trump's going to claim this whole thing is fake, and indeed he's suing. So this was a social media post. I look forward to getting Rupert Murdoch to testify in my lawsuit against him and his pile of garbage newspaper, the Wall Street Journal. That will be an interesting experience. Yes, it will be. So this is my initial reaction to this stuff is good luck. Trump can bully, right, reporters. Trump can bully private citizens. Trump can bully, various news organizations. But it becomes a very different situation when you're trying to bully someone who has a very big war chest. And at this stage, when I saw this picture of these two dudes, I'm like, okay, these are two guys at the end of their life, right? They're old, and I guess they want to leave some sort of legacy behind on who can determine what truth is. That's sort of my initial thoughts. And they're going to go to fight over this. Supposedly, and I always say supposedly on this stuff, Trump is saying, hey, I called up the Wall Street Journal and said, why are you doing this thing? Blah, 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 blah. And then I guess Trump was saying, called up Rupert Murdoch, hey, why are you doing this thing? Blah, blah, blah. And evidently, Wall Street Journal felt that they had a compelling story and have seen this thing. This is the leather book, and decided to run the story. I just think, in just my opinion, that likely there's got to be some sort of book out there or something, because they ran this story, and all they'd have to do is release said thing. And the courts, right, going through this lawsuit and discovery, we're gonna see all this stuff. It's going to get ugly very, very quickly, not just for Trump, but for all kinds of people. And Trump is opening a whole can of worms, and all these things are going to be squiggling out, just like Trump's signature, which is like, described by the Wall Street Journal as being like women's pubic hair. Trump is a known liar, right? And in this situation, when you go to court, tell it to a judge. And this goes for both sides. So I think, regardless of what happens here, there's going to be so much media attention on this thing because, even for me, I knew this stuff was going on, and it just slowly started building up. And then the problem with Trump is he's got his base support. MAGA people have been calling out for release of Epstein files. Now, we've always known Trump has a history of Epstein, so none of this stuff is like secret, like it's all been there in public. And the more that comes out, we're going to get more details, more people are going to come out and speak up. And my initial reaction also, this is sort of like a Nixon type of situation. For those of you who are old enough, you remember the Nixon thing. There's two things that I learned about that. One is follow the money. And then two is sometimes the cover-up can be worse than the crime. In this particular situation, you could say they're equal, because we're talking about a particularly heinous thing, talking about the Epstein situation. And, I can't even describe it on YouTube, but you guys generally know what it is already. And you're talking about Trump, who has a history of making all sorts of statements, tapes. I'll bring up, for example, he was liable for sexual abuse. He's also a convicted felon. He is involved with all sorts of, heinous acts. That's all the only way to put it. That's who he is in public. That's who he is in private. And I think a lot of this stuff that we're seeing with the Trump situation, towards the end of his career here, and honestly, I think the end of Trump, is a lot of hypocrisy out there for people who claim that they're all of this wonderful, Christian conservative people, and then they support Trump, who is obviously an awful person. I mean, it should be obvious to anyone. And I find this really fascinating that then Trump is going to go back and try to sue the people that built him. And I'm talking about Rupert Murdoch. So will Rupert Murdoch go ahead and just bow down to Trump? I mean, I just don't think so. I'm no fan of Rupert Murdoch. I'm no fan of Donald Trump, right? I'm not a fan of either of these people. And so who's going to win? This is like, deciding, pick your biggest monsters, I guess, and have them fight and see what happens to your city. And just for example, I think they're essentially going to burn everything. In this situation also, Trump has passed a couple key legislations, so the Republicans got what they wanted. MAGA is not going to get anything out of this stuff. Trump has promised you jobs and all these kind of things. You're not going to get any of that. And what you're going to end up getting is realizing that you've been conned this whole time. This guy is a predator. Isn't it obvious to anyone listening? And usually when I hear people who say that they support Trump, I've actually talked to people, because sometimes people ask me if I know MAGA, and I do. They'll say, well, I like Trump's policies and he's there to help me, but I know he's a bad person, but sometimes you need a bad person to solve the bad problem. So, I mean, even people who like Trump know his character, right? You should definitely know. You're talking about someone, will easily, sell his grandmother down the road for personal gain. Multiple divorces, multiple kids, multiple affairs. That's who this person is, involved with Epstein heavily. And I'm not shocked when this letter thing came out. Now, even if this thing is, who knows, we'll see if we're ever going to see it or not. The mere fact that this isn't shocking, right? The whole Epstein thing is not shocking, shows you the kind of character that he is. And this rests upon whether or not the Wall Street Journal, let's just talk about the court case, purposely knew this thing was false, right? Would they, if they knew it was false, would they still release it? I mean, I'm assuming here that they looked at, this book thing in this letter and was like, hey, that looks, real. They talked to multiple people. That's what I'm going to assume. But we won't know until actually this goes into, they're suing and discovery and people start presenting facts and give depositions and put everything out there. The like, how do we get in this thing? What's the chain of possession? I'm sure the Trump people and people who support Trump want to destroy this thing as quickly as possible. The thing with Trump is he's probably has so many of these types of, relationships in his lifetime over, a period of several years. He's quite old now, and he's been involved with all sorts of, dirty people for a long time. He probably can't even keep this stuff straight himself. And so for me, if the Wall Street Journal is printing this thing, and if they do and have this said book, and then they'll bring in all these experts to, authenticate said thing, the story is going to blow up even bigger. So, the lawsuit, whether Trump wins or loses, is already a loser because the media is going to focus so heavily on this thing, right? I mean, just think about this, guys. If someone that you're closely associated with, and there's multiple pictures out there in this situation, Epstein is involved with all sorts of, the most awful things that you can imagine. And you're associated with said person, that's already bad. And you're making it bigger, putting a microscope on this relationship, saying, well, I knew the person, but I never sent that. And then we're all going to dig into like, okay, so how close were you, right? And now more people are going to come out and release more evidence. Oh, well, I was at a party one time and I saw Trump do this, or, I heard from a friend that Trump did this, and then people start contacting, looking for that friend, or I heard that Trump did this. This is something that's been throughout his whole career. People who support Trump then say, wow, these are all lies made up by the media. And then that's where it gets interesting, because Trump is suing said media, which is Rupert Murdoch, who built Trump. And so I just think this is opening up a whole can of worms. I don't think Rupert Murdoch will back down, but we'll see. Oftentimes these things will end in some sort of settlement, but with the the pockets of Rupert Murdoch, I'm curious for this to go to trial. Please do. Well, let's see what happens with this. So that's my initial thoughts on this stuff. I want to hear yours, and I'll catch you all in the next video.